After 40 years of wandering, the Israelites, led by Joshua, stood on the edge of the Promised Land. For 40 years they'd lived with the promise, and now it was within their grasp. But between them and this land stood the city of Jericho, guarded by mighty walls. God had promised this land to Abraham's descendants, a place of abundance and peace. The Israelites were about to face their first major test of faith and obedience. Jericho was a mighty fortress, its walls considered impenetrable. The people of Jericho were renowned warriors, feared for their strength. Can you imagine the sight of those walls? Towering over the Israelites, a symbol of the challenges they faced. But God had a plan that would demonstrate His power and faithfulness. Jericho, in all its might, would become a testament to God's power. The walls of Jericho were about to become a canvas upon which God would paint a picture of His might and faithfulness. Imagine Joshua receiving instructions that would have seemed absurd to any military strategist. March around the city once with all the armed men, God commanded. Do this for 6 days. This wasn't warfare as they knew it. This was an act of faith, a demonstration of obedience. On the 7th day, march around the city 7 times, with the priests going ahead of the ark. This wasn't just a military maneuver, it was a holy procession, an act of worship in the face of the enemy. The Israelites, their hearts filled with a mix of trepidation and faith, followed God's commands to the letter. Can you picture it? A vast multitude of people, warriors at the front, followed by the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant, marching in complete silence around the city of Jericho. Every day for 6 days they marched, once around the city, then back to their camp. With each step, the Israelites were demonstrating their faith, their unwavering belief that God would fight for them. The Ark of the Covenant, carried at the center of the procession, was a powerful symbol of God's presence among His people. It represented His covenant with them, His promise to protect and guide them. The Israelites knew that the Ark represented God's power and glory. Each day as they marched around the city, their faith grew stronger. They knew that God was with them and that He was about to do something extraordinary. Imagine the rising sun each morning casting long shadows over the camp of the Israelites. Each day they would wake up, the walls of Jericho looming large in the distance. Can you feel the tension building, the anticipation growing with each passing day? The second day, a sense of purpose settled upon them. They were not merely marching, they were participating in a divine strategy, a holy siege. By the 5th and 6th days, a palpable excitement filled the air. Now imagine the sound that pierced the silence of their march, the blowing of the trumpets. These weren't just any trumpets, these were the trumpets of God, crafted for a specific purpose, to announce His presence and His power. The sound reverberated off the walls of Jericho, a sonic assault on the city's defenses. The trumpets served as a reminder to the Israelites that they were engaged in a spiritual battle. For the inhabitants of Jericho, the trumpets must have been a source of growing dread. Inside the walls of Jericho, an unsettling silence would have descended after the Israelites returned to their camp each day. The inhabitants, peering down from their ramparts, would have witnessed the strange spectacle of the silent army and the echoing trumpets. Fear and uncertainty must have gripped their hearts. The silence, punctuated only by the distant sound of the trumpets, would have been deafening. Each day of silence was a day closer to judgment, a gradual build-up to a display of divine power. The 7th day arrived, a day unlike any other. The Israelites awoke with a sense of anticipation thicker than the morning mist. Word had spread among the Israelites of God's promise. On this day, He would deliver Jericho into their hands. The silence of the past 6 days had laid a blanket of anticipation over the camp. This wasn't just another march, it was the culmination of their faith. The Israelites, hardened by years of wandering, stood ready. Following God's specific instructions, the Israelites began their march on that seventh day. 7 times they circled the city, the Ark of the Covenant leading the way. Each circuit built the tension, their footsteps drumming a primal rhythm against the earth. The silence remained unbroken, save for the steady blast of the trumpets. The inhabitants of Jericho, watching from their ramparts, must have felt a tremor of fear with each passing circuit. Then after the 7th circuit, after the trumpets had sounded their final deafening blast, God unleashed his power. The once impenetrable walls of Jericho, those mighty symbols of human strength, crumbled and fell. Dust and debris filled the air, a cloud of destruction that momentarily obscured the city from view. The Israelites watched in awe and terror as the very foundations of Jericho were shaken. God had demonstrated his power in a way that no one could deny. With the walls breached, the Israelites, energized by divine power, surged forward. The battle was swift and decisive, a fulfillment of God's promise. Jericho, once a symbol of strength and defiance, lay in ruins. Yet amidst the victory, a somber note prevailed. The fall of Jericho serves as a powerful reminder to us today of the importance of faith and obedience. The story of Jericho isn't just about crumbling walls, it's about unwavering faith and divine power. And woven into the fabric of this story, we find a number that echoes throughout the Bible, 7. It's not just a random number, it's a number that whispers of God's intentionality, his love for order and completeness. In the story of Jericho, the Israelites marched for 6 days, and on the 7th the walls fell. The number 7 emphasizes the completeness of God's plan, the fullness of his power, and the certainty of his timing. Section 2, 7 Days of Creation, a blueprint for divine order. We see the significance of 7 right from the beginning in the very act of creation. God created the world in 6 days, and on the 7th he rested. This wasn't because he was tired. God doesn't get tired. It was a deliberate act, a way of setting a pattern, a rhythm for life. Just as God created the world with order and purpose, he also works in our lives with the same intentionality. The number 7 reminds us that God is a God of order, not chaos, and that he is working all things together for our good. Section 3:7 in the life of faith, cycles of trust and obedience. The number 7 isn't just a historical or theological curiosity, it speaks to our lives today. Just as the Israelites marched around Jericho for 7 days, our lives are often marked by seasons of waiting, of circling the promises of God. We face giants, obstacles that seem insurmountable, just like the walls of Jericho. But the story of Jericho reminds us that God is faithful. And sometimes, just like on that 7th day in Jericho, we'll witness his power in extraordinary ways, and we'll be reminded that he is a God who keeps his promises. Now, you might be wondering, is this just a story? Or is there any evidence that something like this actually happened? Well, that's where things get really interesting. Archaeologists, those detectives of the ancient world, have been digging around the ruins of Jericho for a long time. And guess what? They found evidence of walls collapsing. They've uncovered layers of destruction that line up with the timeline of the biblical account. Now, I'm not talking about perfectly preserved walls with a giant inscription saying, "Brought down by the power of God," but the evidence does point to a sudden catastrophic collapse, consistent with the biblical narrative. Imagine uncovering these ancient stones, piecing together fragments of pottery, and finding clues that corroborate the story passed down through generations. It's like holding history in your hands, feeling a tangible connection to the events described in the Bible. Archaeology can't prove the Bible in a scientific sense, but it can offer fascinating insights and support for the historical context of biblical stories. But here's the thing about the story of Jericho, it's not just about bricks and mortar or even archaeological discoveries. It's a story that speaks to something deep within the human spirit. It's about faith, obedience, and the awesome power of God. We all face our own Jerichos in life, obstacles that seem insurmountable, challenges that test our faith. The story of Jericho reminds us that with God, nothing is impossible. It encourages us to trust in His promises even when we don't understand His ways. Just like those walls came tumbling down, God can break down the walls of fear, doubt, and despair in our own lives. He can open doors that seem permanently shut, make a way where there seems to be no way. But just like the Israelites, we have a part to play. We need to be willing to march, to obey, and to trust in His timing. The story of Jericho is a timeless reminder that God is on the move, working in and through His people to accomplish His purposes. The dust has long settled on the ruins of Jericho, but the lessons we can glean from those ancient stones still resonate today. Imagine standing there amidst the rubble, feeling a sense of awe and wonder at the power of God. The walls that once seemed so impenetrable, so permanent, lay shattered, a testament to the truth that nothing can withstand the power of God when He decides to move. The story of Jericho isn't just a dusty tale from a distant past. It's a vibrant reminder that the same God who brought down those walls is still active in our world today. He's still in the business of breaking down barriers, of making a way where there seems to be no way. But just like with the Israelites, it requires something of us. It requires faith, not just a passive belief, but an active trust that propels us forward, even when we can't see the whole path ahead. Think about the areas in your own life where you need to see God move. Maybe it's a relationship that seems broken beyond repair, a financial burden that feels crushing, or a health challenge that leaves you feeling hopeless. The story of Jericho reminds us that even when the odds seem stacked against us, even when the situation seems impossible, God is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine. We may not be marching around physical walls, but each of us faces our own Jericho moments. Those times when we're called to step out in faith, to trust God even when it doesn't make sense. It might mean forgiving someone who's hurt us deeply, stepping out of our comfort zone to pursue a God-given dream, or simply holding on to hope when life throws its worst at us. The Israelites didn't defeat Jericho with their own strength or military might. They triumphed through obedience and trust in God's plan, and that's the same invitation we have today. It's not about our ability, it's about our availability. It's about saying yes to God, even when His instructions seem strange, even when the path ahead seems uncertain. The journey of faith isn't always easy. There will be times when we're tempted to give up, to turn back, to doubt God's goodness. But the story of Jericho encourages us to keep marching, to keep trusting, to keep believing that God is working even when we can't see it. And just like the Israelites celebrated victory on that seventh day, we too can have confidence that our God is a God who keeps His promises. He is faithful, He is able, and He is with us every step of the way. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a thumbs up and share. If you haven't already, please come and join our family by subscribing to our channel. May God bless you in all your endeavors. Thank you for watching.